Alert Media.
Hello, my fellow Dreadites. We are joined today by Clay McLeod Chapman, one of my favorite horror authors. I am so excited to have Clay with us on the show today. Clay McLeod Chapman writes novels, comic books, and children's books. He also writes for film and TV and is the author of many adult horror novels. Some of my personal favorites include What Kind of Mother, Wake Up and Open Your Eyes. We reviewed that earlier this year. You have to check that out. Whisper Down the Lane is an incredible, mind-bending, expectation-shifting novel. And now, Shiny Happy People, which is his YA debut. Clay, thank you so much for being with us. I rattled off a number of books there, and I am not lying when I say the ones that you highlight in your bio are some of my absolute favorites that you've written.
That's wild. It's just so funny to hear, someone kind of like bounce your bio back at you and you're just like, man, what a what a world we live in.
I
Um,
can't even imagine.
oh God, it's I don't know. I have no greater point other than just like I'm sitting here and I'm just like, damn.
Yeah. You're pretty prolific. You've written a lot of stuff. I first came across you actually in like face-to-face-ish during one of your Fango reads. You wrote a short story for
Oh yeah.
Fangoria, and
Yeah.
we were new subscribers, and we're like, well, we got to get on that.
Oh,
So my
that's so
wife and I,
cool.
yeah, it was the first time I heard you read, but I also heard you read on Larry Fessenden's show. I think you did a reading or two for Larry.
Wow. Wow,
So
yeah.
yeah, I
There
was
was
like,
that the Tales from Beyond the Pale, their radio
that's
show?
it.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Deep cut. That's pretty impressive.
Well, you're such a charismatic and dynamic reader. I was like, I wonder if Clay would grace us with his presence on this
Oh my
show.
God. In a friggin' heartbeat.
Yeah, well,
I
thank you.
well, thank you. Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get started as a writer?
Oof. It's funny. I mean, like my origin story is one of those goofy larks where like, I mean, I was like a terrible student, like window my attention just would always go out at like I was just constantly in a state of not being present and whatever was happening in the front of the classroom just could not hold my attention. And my grades 100% absolutely showed it. And I was failing at a very early age. And it took my sixth grade English teacher to kind of pull me aside one day and say, hey, you're failing my class. You're going to be repeating the sixth grade next year if you don't do something. And she struck a deal with me. And she said, if you like enter this writing competition, like write a story and I'll give you some extra credit and we'll bump that grade up. And I had never thought about it. Like writing was not something that kind of entered into my purview. I love to read, but writing was just not there yet for me. But I got that extra credit and I passed and I moved on to the seventh grade. And then like a month later, I get this letter in the mail saying, congratulations, you've won this contest. And it was the first time to have something that I had created that someone else responded to in any positive way. And I was just like, oh, wow, this is gratification feels good. And I kept entering that contest year after year after year until finally they cut me off. Still failed every class I could, but like class was theoretically in session for me in these contests, these competitions of just like writing plays or short stories and that was, I mean, that was 12, 12 years old. And it just like, I mean, I never stopped. Like that is all I've ever done with myself for 3,000 years now.
That's fantastic. I was a similar student, so I absolutely relate to that. It wasn't
Yeah.
until I found performing that unlocked academics for me.
Oh my God.
Um,
Was it one of
yeah.
those things where you were this square peg and everybody tried to put you in a circular hole? And then it was, when you say performance, was it just like you
Oh,
like theater
theater.
or yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. We ran a
amazing.
theater company for a long time. And while I'm not the strongest writer, I pride myself on saying I've done every job at that company, including a one-act play. But yeah, it's wild how creative people, especially horror people, are drawn to non-traditional learning styles. Like
Yeah.
our entry point is a little different.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. like horror is just full of theater kids. Like I'm
Yes.
thinking of Nat Cassidy, Eric LaRocca, Sam Rebeline, like all these whether
I
it's
didn't know that.
yeah, have them on. We could have like
Yeah.
a theater symposium.
That would be so much fun. And my theater company did a lot of actual horror plays,
Yeah.
because you want to scratch that itch. Well, I'm curious, what drew you to horror specifically? You've been writing for a while. Did you start with horror when you were 12, or was that something you crept into?
I mean, I'll be honest, like it was there from a really early age. I was a scaredy cat. Like I had I don't want to get in like the pop psychology of it all, but like there was probably a period of my childhood where like I had night terrors. There were certain things kind of going on in the domestic sphere that just led to like, ugh, like I needed an outlet, and I was an only child, and I had a lot of time on my hands and a lot of nightmares, and horror as a kind of counterpoint to that. Like there's the things that we deal with as human beings, but then there's the like, you know, I do find a certain catharsis in watching Halloween. And beyond the roller coaster of it or the kind of adrenaline like ride, um I think there is something to be said about horror, particularly when you're young, being there for you to kind of like release these kind of pent up fears or trepidations or anxieties and giving them I don't know, like a safe release. Um, but yeah, like that one babysitter, she put on Halloween like way too young, and that I was hooked.
I think we talk about this a lot on a sub channel where we do like editorial content, but we talk a lot about horror as catharsis and a controlled way to approach the nastiness of daily life. But we
Hmm.
also talk a lot about horror as a rite of passage. And it's taboo. You're crossing over into something distinctly adult. And I think it's so important for young audiences to have an approachable way to come into
Yeah.
the horror sphere. And I think you really do that lovely with Shiny Happy People, your upcoming novel, which is coming out in November. Um,
Yeah.
your first YA release. So what inspired you to try a YA novel?
I mean, it's interesting because th- someone approached me, um, and it was because I wrote this novel a while back called Ghost Eaters, which was all about like a haunted drug. And it did okay. I think it did pretty good, and it's definitely probably one of the better known things that I've done. And it hit like certain people kind of responded to it, and they're like this one uh, company like reached out and they're like, hey, have like what would you think of like doing a body snatchers version, like invasion of the like Snapchatters, and um I grew up in a time where like, I remember the faculty, I remember,
Mm.
and kind of going through the body snatcher, every generation has their own version of that and loving them all, but definitely the Donald Sutherland one being my personal fave. Um, yeah, I mean, on it, like it was literally someone saying, "Have you ever thought about doing a body snatcher story for our day and age?" Speaking specifically to social media, peer pressure, and the opioid epidemic, and like how, these things kind of permeate and kind of insinuate themselves into seemingly innocent people and everyday people, and I was like, that sounds like a fun kind of challenge. And so I went for it. And lo and behold, shiny, happy people.
Well, and I think all those themes come through extremely well. Like the social media aspect of it is it's sharp commentary. The opioid aspect. One thing that you didn't mention that I'm curious about is the juxtaposition of big tobacco versus big pharma,
Yeah.
specifically in this little town.
Yeah.
Was that pointed? Tell me a little bit about that theme.
Well, I mean, I am a Virginia boy and I grew up in, tobacco country. RJR was right there. Like, it like big tobacco was such a like my God, I had a member of my family actually worked for Philip Morris for years, and it was always something that was kind of present, even if it was just kind of like driving down the street and, here are just acres upon acres of tobacco fields.
Mm.
Um, and I grew up in the shadow of those kind of that industry and those plants and watching it collapse or kind of like atrophy and, seeing you can't necessarily say it like rose up from the ashes of big tobacco, but big pharma kind of like carved out its own specific kind of place that has since kind of gone through its own personal particular trials and travails. And it just feels like a hydra head to me. It's like you cut off the head of one and out sprouts another, and it's I I don't know. I wanted to, I don't know if I make kind of how sharp the point is, but I do feel like in the book, you have one industry dying and another just taking its place, and they look
Mhm.
almost exactly the same.
Yeah, the same sort of addiction-based business model. It's scary. I never considered it before, which is why I put it in my notes. I was like, oh my goodness, that is absolutely what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Leveraging those same mechanisms.
I mean, at least this is an awful thing to say, forgive me, but like, at least they're like Big Pharma never had like a Joe Camel or like a mascot, which
Yeah.
maybe that's a lesson to someone learned, but yeah, it's just it's terrifying how targeted youth culture is as a like
Mm.
this is here for you because you are our target audience client base,
Hmm.
market, and we're just going to advertise to you, like this is for you whether we ever say it out loud or not. But yeah,
And kids don't have the defense mechanisms or the media literacy to stand up to that. It's just a third part of the peer pressure that
yeah,
exists. In this book, you have peer pressure from friends, you have peer pressure from family as well, which I think is under talked about.
yeah,
But that third corporate peer pressure is, that's the
yeah.
icing on the cake.
Um, which is why I mean, like, it's so ripe for a pod person body snatcher narrative because that is nothing but peer pressure. Like I like the beyond the kind of paranoia of like who are you and are you who you say you are, but like the kind of external like you're just tired. Like let's go to sleep. Like just like it'll be everything will be okay in the morning.
Mm.
Um, I just I love that. It's my catnip.
Yeah, I think close to a quote from the book. I think you say generic gentrification, but it's a social gentrification that we
Hmm.
don't actually. Nobody's having that conversation. We look at like cities and neighborhoods being gentrified, but a social gentrification I thought was a really interesting thing to present to a young audience. Which, yeah.
You're making me sound so smart here, man. I totally meant to do all of the things
Yeah.
you just said.
I would have needed this book. I would have devoured this book when I was a kid. I came up on Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark? I'm, born in the 80s, solidified as a person, a little gelatinous Vince in the 90s. And so,
Amazing.
I would have devoured this book. I needed to hear this book because I think this book plays right to individuality and self-actualization and successfully or unsuccessfully in the end.
Yeah.
Um, but it's if I had to distill this book down, and I always ask this question, directors handle this question so very differently than authors. But I'm going to float out a couple of themes, and the one theme that I think is the most empowering, and you can tell me what you wanted the audience to leave this book with, if there was something
Okay.
you wanted them to do or think or feel. But I think really this story comes down to what makes us human:
Yeah.
the good, the bad, the ugly, love, anger, pain, sadness. Maybe there's beauty in all of it. And our scars are what make us who we truly are. And I wonder, is there something you hope that a young reader might leave feeling or thinking or doing? And a director typically handles that by going, yes, because I was a director, and that's a director's question. An author's like, I want people to have a good time. But however you want to answer it.
I mean, it's so funny because I feel like, you know, I shouldn't speak for authors in general, but maybe like that there's just this sense of like I have no idea what my books are about, and someone needs to tell me what it is that I have done to them because otherwise I'm in trouble. Um, but I mean, I do think there is something to be said about uh I, youth today, kids today. Um, I just the sense that I get is just the kind of like the sheer amount of peer pressure to fit in, which has always been there. It's just kind of been like they're just different iterations of it, but like the notion of like not calling attention to yourself and just kind of like that homogenization of personality. Um, I mean, I have two kids, and I see with our eldest, like he's navigating middle school right now. And just that idea of like, when can he feel like a singular individual, like a person versus like wanting to keep his head low and, not call attention to himself and all of those like the scars and the imperfections and the things that make you kind of wholly singular and make you you. Um, those are things to be celebrated in a culture that wants to celebrate that, but I think also there is that fear of, you know, sticking out or being a target, and whether that's bullying or just the need to fit in like that. I don't know. Like I just think of like there's that Far Side comic where it's like you've got in Antarctic there's like a dozen different 100 different penguins, and there's just one that's kind of like standing up and being like I gotta be me. Um, I just want me to be me and my son to be my son, and like n never lose that sense of kind of individuality in a culture that seems to be celebrating or just trying to like keep the head low.
And in a culture that celebrates to some extent substance use.
Hmm.
I thought back to like the films that we had coming up, like Can't Hardly Wait, or any teen comedy was set at a party, everybody's drinking. We can go to horror and they break the rules and scream. Everybody's drinking while
Yeah.
saying you can't drink or do drugs. Uh, and I thought it was interesting as somebody who doesn't drink or do any mind-altering substances. I thought it was refreshing how this didn't glorify the parties. They were
Yeah.
actually giant sources of danger in the novel.
Yeah.
Um, and, I think it was a really well-walked tightrope walk of exposing how kids are, as well as showing that, maybe you don't have to do that. If we're relating to our protagonist, you
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to be that. Did you have a specific kind of approach, or was that just something that happened because of the plot?
It's it's funny because I keep saying it's funny. Uh, I was watching way too much Euphoria while writing this book. And, you find your spirit animals. And for me, I was like, oh, let's marry body snatchers with Euphoria, which Euphoria is already terrifying in of itself. You don't need to add a layer of genre onto that for it to be the most terrifying, horrifying, non-horror anything ever. Because the kind of warts and all of it, and just the kind of like what what happens within this kind of specific microcosm of the world. Um, I just watched that show and I'm just like, it's candy hued, it's so colorful and so bright, and yet it is the scariest friggin' thing I've ever seen. And I wanted to emulate that to the extent that, um, you know, party culture and kind of the kind of drinking and kind of the parental like we've created certain safe spaces to allow younger people to kind of experiment or explore, and the inherent risk of like mom or dad saying like, oh, you can have a party at our house, and I'll buy you whatever kind of booze, and like just keep it at home and it'll be safe, and like I trust you, and like just that to me felt like a kind of ripe place for getting a little spooky.
Absolutely. I also, this we it's no secret we're dealing with addiction a lot with this novel. And as somebody who's had addiction very close to home, without going into all the gory details, and certainly not to the impact that is it Kyra or Kira? How should her name be said?
It's so funny. This may be the first time I'm going to say the name out loud, but I'm going to say Kira. Kira.
Kira. Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. Love it. Uh, love it. So Kira had some really huge trauma associated with addiction, and my trauma was nowhere near that, although it did hit very close to home.
Mhm.
Um, I wonder how you can approach it with such a, I mean, there were moments in this book that like gut punched me.
Yeah.
Sort of moments where you think things are resolved and they're so not resolved, and it's just another form of addiction. Um, it hit very close to home. How did you walk that tightrope with all of the horror and all of the gut punches, but with all of the sensitivity of somebody who's not villainizing addiction or demonizing people who are suffering from that? I thought it was
Yeah.
super well handled without flattering you too much.
Well, I mean, frankly, this might be one of the first times I'm ever even talking out loud about this with anyone. So, for me, like the jury is still out, purely because, I mean, this book doesn't come out for a couple months now, and like,
Yeah.
the initial reader reviews have been really positive, which is such a huge relief. But, to get to what you're speaking of, I it's tough and it's scary because, you know, the older I get and the more kind of I have to own up to my own identity as like a cis white older man, writing about a young woman in high school, like, like, and for me, like, it's kind of like, how, like, am I, do I have permission to write this? Like,
Hmm.
what is, in the things that she is specifically going through, like, if they are not my personal experiences, does that still give me license to like explore them? And, having had like a lot of kind of friendly conversations with editors and beta readers, like it's always that kind of notion of like being honest to the emotion, like being true to the emotional content of the character. And if that rings true, if you're, it ceases to be, or it's on the path to not be exploitative or there purely for the sake of you know, trauma decor, like
Hmm.
you have to be honest about it. And for me, like I always kind of shirked away that idea of write what you know, but speak specifically, like recalibrate it to write what you feel. And the things that Kira goes through in terms of her own anxiety and her own kind of fears of like, well, if I do this, if I drink this, does that set me off a path of my mother? Or, always wanting to be in control and not letting go an inch, because that's the only way you know how to be, that Kira knows how to be. And that's like, you know, I growing up, I had family members who dealt with substance abuse or alcoholism, and had friends who dealt with substance abuse, and seen how their lives and the lives of those kind of in their immediate orbit were altered because of their addiction. We carry that, we hold on to that, and it's like I I grew up with this kind of single-mindedness of like, I need to not be my father. I need to not be like and it's just this mental thing that is like, this is how I identify myself, because I am not this person, or I am not like that family member. So Kira's anxiety is in fact, that's my anxiety, because that's how I grew up.
Yeah, I share that as someone who probably drank too much and then quit drinking because I had gotten married and was running a nonprofit theater. I didn't want to become my father. So it hit
Hmm.
so true to me. I couldn't leave that question on the table. It's a vulnerable thing that I don't talk about on camera
Yeah.
at all.
Well,
But yeah,
I appreciate it. And, you know, you asking the question actually makes me, it compels me and it forces me to kind of answer it for myself because, like, I mean, literally, this is probably the first conversation I've had about shiny, happy people with anybody. And so you're asking, and I'm like, oh wow, I guess that is in there. And like, yeesh, here we go.
yeah,
It's a doozy, I want to pay lip service to Josh Mallerman because he wrote this amazing book a while back called, oh my God, am I going to say uh, Daphne,
Hmm.
um, which
I've not read that one.
it's a really good one. It's one that like kind of it has this kind of singular intent behind it, and it speaks very specifically about anxiety. And I remember reading it as I was working on this book and just being like, this is my North Star. Like the characters in this book are dealing with their own anxiety and how they kind of channel it. And I was like, oh, I learned from the best, copy from the best. I copied from Josh Mallerman.
Yeah. Honestly, steal like an artist.
Hmm.
It's going to be different because it's yours. It's interesting you mentioned anxiety. There's a really cool visual metaphor for anxiety in this book that keeps sprouting up, shall we say. The vines of the anxiety mirroring the vines of the pod people. It was just, there's no question here. I'm just being flattering. It was so well done.
Oh man.
This book pulls no punches for young readers. This is a Clay McLeod Chapman novel. It just happens to be set in high school. And I want to really say that for our listeners, because if you're a fan of Clay's work, you will like this book. If you're a 42-year-old man, I don't think that you held back in any way. The vocabulary, that was like, did he just throw a purloined in there? That's an SAT word. The vocabulary is rich. The metaphors are rich. Visually, the literary metaphors are rich. The subject matter is brave and fearless. And so I'm hyping this book because I think that adult readers should also put this on their to be read list. Uh,
Your
no
lips to
question there.
a million readers' ears because Lord knows, like, how how does anybody find a book these days? Like,
Mhm.
you know, I was very fortunate to be able to write this book and tell this story, and now it's like, oh man, I have to find people to read it.
Yeah.
And like it's a it's one thing to get that book on the shelf, but my golly, how do you get it off? How do you get the book off the shelf?
Yeah, we always celebrate, specifically with independent filmmakers, and we say there's always something to love about every film, even if it's just the fact that it was on a screen.
Yeah.
But our part in that ecosystem is to lift up these independent voices and voices that have publishers as well. It's specifically in this day and age where reading is maybe not everyone's first hobby. There are plenty of people. If you love reading, I'm not dismissing you. That I'm a big reader, but it's hard to generate that momentum. I honestly, when I transitioned from artist to critic, first of all, your whole identity gets reorganized. That being
Hmm.
an artist is such an intrinsic part of who you are. I just remembered that there were not a lot of people who were willing to go out and champion the work that was being done on independent stages. Even, you're a nonprofit, you're a semi-professional theater, but there weren't a lot of people banging the drum for us. So my job here is to uplift voices that I think are valid. And boy, do I think this is a valid book. And you have another book coming up before this. I just didn't get a copy of it yet, so I can't talk to it very specifically, but it's a collection of short stories called Acquired Taste. And if I'm not mistaken, it comes out on the 9th. Is that when it
Yeah.
comes out?
Yeah,
So
September 9th.
that's a week before you all are listening to this, so there's still time. It's at your local bookstore or available digitally, and I know I will be getting it, if not on Audible, then in hard copy at my local Barnes and Noble, which we're not sponsored by them. They just have a really good employee who picks really good stuff to highlight. Um, but
Amazing.
Yeah, so I'm very much so looking forward to Acquired Taste. Do you want to give us a rundown of what that looks like? I'm interested in this. This is a selfish question.
Yeah. I mean, it's loopy. It's a doozy. It's 25 short stories. Probably written within like the scope of like the last like 7 to 8 years. A lot of them were published out there in the ether, except for one. There's one previously unreleased track. So, and it's honestly, like short stories are like that's where I just get all my obsessions out. Like
Mm.
I like to write a lot about how terrifying parenthood is. I don't know, like it's just it like it had there's everything in there. Like it's the kitchen sink thing. Like there's haunted hammers or evil batch of baby carrots or like a cult of axolotl worshiping nuns, fungal infections that go really bad. Like it's, uh, I, but these are the things that like, maybe it's to say that like the world is pretty scary, but like the mundane is so scary. Like I just, you know,
Mm.
every time I see a hammer, I'm like, what if that was haunted? Or I see a stuffed animal, I'm like, what if that's a monster? Or like, just like it's I don't do drugs, but I feel like I have like a million stoner epiphanies where I'll just be like kind of sitting there like minding my own business and I'll see something and I'll be like, whoa, what if that hammer had a ghost in it? It's like that's just what my head does, for better or for worse.
If you didn't have me at Parenthood Horror, because as I have she's going to be two in November, and I have another one on the way in December. I don't, my wife does, but
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. Having a toddler is the most enlightening thing. You learn so much about yourself because they're mini mirrors. But
Mm-hmm.
it's also the most gratifying thing when she says, "That's brown," and I'm like, "Yeah, I taught you that. Awesome." You know,
Yeah.
but it's also a constant barrage of fears. So you had me there. But if I wasn't sold, then I'm definitely sold on Haunted Hammer because I have to know what this is about.
Yeah. There's a haunted hammer
Oh.
in there. God, too many, you know, I put a ghost in it. There's that sketch from Portlandia where it's like put a bird on it. Like for me, it's just put a ghost in it. That's all I do.
I love it. I love it. I would love to just pick your brain about so many of your books, but I want to just give a little bit of love to Wake Up and Open Your Eyes because it's still sitting on our best of list for 2025, and I don't see it being dethroned off of the best of list. It was so relevant, so sharp, so poignant, so bleak. In my review, and it's not a retraction, but I want to amend my review and say I said everybody sucks here, and it's not that the characters suck. It's what happens to them makes them suck. The characters were really fleshed out, and I just want to clarify my review. But it was just so. I mean, it made me take a look at myself as I'm sitting there judging people who may sit across the aisle from me in my
Yeah.
political beliefs. I was forced to then judge myself because I was judging them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm obsessed with mind viruses. So I
Oh
was
yeah.
bought in from the beginning of that novel. I cracked the book and I was like,
Oh.
oh. And that first, I will also say the first movement of that book was gnarly and so very uncomfortable to read.
Yeah. Yeah. It's if I can keep you past the first 70 pages, it's like it's all downhill after page 71. And like you know, the amount of DNFs I have gotten off of this book, it's like
Ah,
I know where you stop. And it's like, oh, 68, like page 68, I'm out, done. Can't read this book. And I get it. Like
yeah.
it's not a pleasurable experience. And in terms of your amendment, I uh, I love that because like I do think people come into this book in particular and they're so ready to like cast judgment. Like I
Mm,
don't like these characters. None of these characters are likable. Like ugh. And there's a certain kind of amount of that is there by design of like
mm,
what is it that you, dear reader, are bringing to the table? And it's so easy to like start wagging your finger at like you have different political beliefs than me, and therefore I am going to wag, wag, wag. Um, but I do think that the book comes full circle and says, well, why did you do that? Like, what, what gives you the right to feel that way? And are you somehow better than anyone else? And yeah, I don't know.
You made me complicit. By the end of that book, I was complicit and had to be like, "Ooh, I need a mind virus vaccine here for a second." I had to like take a
Man,
breather. Really, really challenging stuff
yeah.
in the best possible way.
Your lips, like honestly, like that book is, it's been out for 9 months now. And, like, I don't know. People either, I don't know if it's a love-hate sort of thing, but it's definitely like, it, there's no kind of middle, there's no meh to it. It's like you either like are like, okay, I can get behind this, or like, I never want to read this guy ever again.
I am not of that camp. I'm fully behind it. I can't wait to talk about it again in January on camera.
Man.
I talk about it actually probably more than I should, not on camera to my wife, who I'm like, "You gotta read this." She's like, my wife does a sister channel for Dread Alert Media. Our
Yeah.
listeners are sick of hearing this, but if you haven't followed her yet, you probably should. She does Spooky Families, which is recommendations for spooky and horror content from birth to 17. So
Mm.
her list is full of YA stuff, and she'll be reviewing Shiny Happy People on her channel as well. But yeah, I'm like when I give her an adult rec, she's like, I have 18 arcs I have to finish, and I'm like, I hear my heart goes out to you, dear. Um,
It's a
but
good book
looping it
for
back to Shiny Happy
Thanksgiving
People, I have one
vacation.
more. Yeah, exactly, and that comes out November 11th from Delacorte Books. If I haven't said it yet, I'm going to say it again at the end, so put your listening ears on. Um, I have one more question about this book. And it's more a question about you, but there are plenty of gross scenes in this book, and there are some really good action, terrifying action sequences in this book. Is there one that stands out without spoiling too much that you were really looking forward to getting to or really looking forward to writing?
Oh my God. I loved the pep rally scene.
Yes, that
That to
was
me was
gnarly.
that was the fun one. I was like, I want to ride a pep rally.
So, full disclosure, as I'm reading it, I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to let our daughter do cheerleading. I don't think I am. Like, I literally was like, I had to stop. I was like, I don't think I should let her do that.
Uh, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean like the party scenes, the dance party prologue at the beginning.
Mhm.
Um, I mean there's the drug dealer scene in the house, the basement. That was a lot of fun. Like I just it was really for me it was just like, oh wow, I've always wanted to do this. And then I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna write a pep rally scene.
It was awesome. I love the Scarface references, all of it. This book is a ton of fun. I mean, it's dark. It is unflinching at times. It makes you question your own humanity, what makes us human. But at the end of the day, I had a good time reading it, which I think is the biggest endorsement as a as a reviewer and as a reader that I'm able to give a book is that
Oh,
I wasn't like, oh man, how many more pages?
yeah.
I was like, I got to get this finished before this interview happens on Tuesday or Friday or whatever day it is.
What is
But
time?
yeah, honestly, we just did press coverage for a convention. We have press coverage for Fantastic Fest coming up, and we have another convention in October. So I honestly don't quite know what time is right now, but
Are you gonna be able to go to Fantastic?
we are not going to be in person. We're doing remote coverage. I don't know that the little one would hold up at grandma's for that long.
Yeah. I have a film that's gonna be
I
there.
Yes, I'm
So
very excited. Do you want to talk about it for a second and give a little plug?
plug, plug, plug. The Restoration at Grayson Manor. It is a very gothic, queer, killer hand movie, starring Chris Colfer from Glee, directed by Glenn McQuaid, and yeah, it's like if Oliver Stone's The Hand married Harold and Maude. That's my pitch.
I'm so looking forward to it. I'm hoping that we're able to get a screener and give some coverage to it because anything with your name attached to it, it has my interest at the outset. So
Yay.
All right,
I'm gonna lose your interest at some point. I'm gonna test that theory
ah,
too much.
you're gonna push me. Oh yeah, I'm gonna be like, oh, gnarly. Oh, I can't know. I have a high tolerance for gnarly things or bleak things. I feel like you do bleak very well as well. It's good. Yeah.
Mm.
So I have two questions that I ask everybody who comes on the podcast, and one of them you've already sort of answered, but I'm going to give you another chance to highlight it. What you list a number of inspirations for this novel, Body Snatcher stories. Do you have a favorite Body Snatcher book or story that you want to give some love to?
Ah. Um, I mean, the 70s Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a, just a classic. Like the amount of times I could watch and rewatch that movie, it it is ultimately my favorite. I I still have kind of on constant replay in my head the end with Donald Sutherland, and I totally steal that for the book. So like it's just there's just no two ways about it. Like that's my yums right there.
Steal like an artist. That's good
Mhm,
stuff.
mhm.
Um, do you have a favorite all-time desert island horror movie?
Ah,
I know
um,
everybody has trouble with this question. It's so hard to pick. It's like
because it's
Sophie's
one.
Choice.
It's just
You
one.
can throw out a couple. I'm always interested in recommendations.
Okay. I mean, my favorites, Evil Dead 2 for
Mm.
sure. David Cronenberg in general, pre M Butterfly, but like I think Dead Ringers is actually my favorite,
I don't
oddly
think I've
enough.
seen that. I need to see that movie.
1988, Jeremy Irons, it's beautiful.
Ah,
It kind of heralded a certain shift into his more mature work. He was like shifting away from body horror into more uh, dramatic prestige horror, I guess. But I love that movie. It's so upsetting. Um, and I mean, like, those are definitely the two that, like, I remember who I was watching them.
mm.
Um, and then Barton Fink by the Coen brothers, which is
Ooh.
horror adjacent, maybe?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'll take it.
okay.
This is why I love that question, is because there's always something that wiser people than me can add to my watch list. So I'm just selfishly asking for your horror recommendations. When Stephen Graham Jones was on before this was a podcast, and I got to give some love to that Weasel Plume shirt.
Mm,
Excellent shirt. I have
mhm.
one as well. Greg Green does great stuff with these shirts.
He's
Um,
amazing.
Stephen turned me on to Near Dark, which I hadn't seen, and that's like my favorite vampire movie of all time now.
Catherine Bigelow can do no
I
wrong in my
I
heart.
can't believe I slept on that for 30 years.
But that's the thing. It's there. It's just waiting for you. Like you just have to
Mhm.
like you have to find it. Like whenever the time is right. It's just
Yeah.
there.
Good luck finding a Blu-ray copy that's not Region B, but yeah, no, once I tracked it down, it was excellent. Okay, so we talked a lot about what you got coming up next. We have Acquired Taste next Tuesday. We have Shiny Happy People on November 11th from Delacorte Books. Anything else that you have? We talked about Fantastic Fest. Anything else you have coming up next that you'd like to plug?
I mean, I'm asking a lot already. So I feel like those I'm gonna stick to those because those are all this year. 2026 has its own stuff. But like, yeah, Shiny Happy People, Acquired Taste, Restoration at Grayson Manor. Yeah, I mean, yeah, wake up and open your eyes if you're still looking for something, icky. But
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
are those are my plugs.
Hey, that's great. Maybe in 2026, whenever those things are revealed, we'll have you back on the show. This has been a blast. Clay, let people know where they can find you. I'll put this in the description for the episode as well. But where can people find you if they want to see you online?
Oh, lordy, lordy. I'm on the Instagrams, the Blue Skies, the Threads, the Facebooks, still on Twitter for some silly reason. I mean, like I'm doing all of the social medias poorly, basically. So I'm out there. You can find me.
And do you have a website we can go to?
I do. It's claymclaudchapman.com.
Oh, imagine that. uh, Clay, this has been a true pleasure. I know we spoke before we started recording about how grateful I am as a
Mm.
fan to have you here. But as a host, I think this was just a fantastic time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you for putting up with me. I really appreciate it. Thanks for chatting.
Awesome. And as always, stay spooky, my friends.